Hello and welcome to Portworx Lightboard sessions. My name is Ryan Wallner, and today we're going to be talking about volume aggregates. So if you haven't gone ahead and watched the volume replication or the introduction to Portworx, definitely go ahead and do that first. They're sort of a prerequisite for understanding what a volume aggregate is and how it differentiates from replication. In general, replicas of an existing volume, such as volume 1 here, are configured in a manner of 1 through 3, meaning how many replicas do you want for your volume. Let's imagine that volume 1 has a replication factor of 2. Now, if we went and drew what this would look like, we could say that the volume has a replication factor of 2, so it will exist on 2 Portworx nodes. And the volume itself will be completely contained on one node. So in this case, we have the volume replicated on this Portworx node and replicated across racks or availability zones to a whole nother Portworx cluster, such that you can lose the Kubernetes worker node that Portworx is running on, or the entire rack, and still remain highly available. Where this comes into volume aggregates is really when you start talking about what if that volume were too big to fit on one node? What does that look like? Well, that's where volume aggregates can use the combined power of both a single Portworx nodes or more than one Portworx node. Meaning that if you have a volume aggregate level of more than 1, you can harness the power of multiple Portworx nodes. And this is good for both size limitations as well as sort of the combined horsepower for sending reads and writes to multiple nodes. This also sort of limits the blast radius if you are configured with a single replica, or even knowing that your data is distributed across more than one node for a single volume. So let's take the example of volume 2 here. Volume 2 can be spread across different aggregates. So let's say that volume 2 has a replication factor of 2, but also an aggregate level of 2. This means that the aggregation for this volume, if there's 1, 2, 3, and 4 blocks of data, will be spread across 2 aggregate nodes. This means that you would likely have part of the volume on one node and the other part of that volume on another node. So as you can see, this single volume is now spread across multiple nodes. And so what this does is allows you to read and write from multiple nodes, take advantage of multiple nodes in terms of horsepower and disk space. And also, this is just the aggregate level of 2, meaning the single volume has an aggregate of 2 Portworx nodes, but replication continues to work. So replicas would still be moved to make sure that there's enough replicas of the data to meet your requirement of replication factor of 2. And therefore, we now have an aggregated volume that's also replicated across availability zones or racks. So the main difference is the fact that an aggregate allows you to say how many nodes the volume should be using in aggregate. The default is 1. So volume 1 here represents the default in the sense that you would set a replication factor and the entire volume would exist on a single aggregate node. If you change that aggregate to more than one, you'll start using more than a single node for a single volume. And this really comes in handy, like I said, when you want to spread that load, that blast radius, or if that one volume is too big for any one storage pool on a single Portworx node. I hope this was helpful, and I hope it makes sense. Until next time, take care.